Thank you, Sheridan, and welcome everybody. Good morning. As she mentioned, today we'll be covering the release preview for Spring 10, and this is the platform part of our presentation. I'm joined today with our co-host Dave Carroll, and he's our Director of Developer Evangelism, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager here at Salesforce, working specifically on Force.com. Before we get started with our presentation today, I would like to review our safe harbor statement. Salesforce.com is a publicly traded company, and we'll be talking about some forward-looking features and statements in today's presentation. We do not want you to make any investment decisions based upon the content of today's presentation, and we encourage you to visit us with any questions online at salesforce.com/investor. With that being said, today's presentation is really a way to communicate all of our features and a way for you to ask questions, and this content is made very available to you on DFC at developer.force.com/releases. We'll be reviewing most of this content and some additional content and going into more details on the features. On this page, you'll find demos, the release notes. We'll have a recording of this webinar in a few days, a bunch of documentation, highlights, and then you can always use our discussion boards. And if you want to discuss Spring 10 features specifically, feel free to do that using a tag of Spring 10. So you can always look at this page while we're going through our presentation today as well. The agenda for our presentation this morning is to cover our features. We divided them into 5 categories. The first would be some email and security enhancements, and then some database features. And then Dave's going to get down into some details for you with the code and API enhancements coming in Spring 10, and talk about some of the exciting user interface features, and also a few of the updates to our sites. And then, as we mentioned, we'll have the open question and answer period at the end. Make sure to put questions in the chat window on your GoToMeeting, and we'll be addressing those at the end. Any that we don't answer directly, we'll answer in follow-ups. And then stay online after for Satya and Viviana to talk about the apps release preview. One more slide before we get started. You might be curious how we get our feature list in the hands of the engineers, and how do they decide which features they're going to develop for you. And it really mostly comes from our Ideas Exchange and from you. And so I want to encourage you to visit the Ideas Exchange at ideas.salesforce.com, promote ideas that you think would be useful to you, jot down any ideas that you have, and encourage other people to participate. And you can see our product managers monitor this, and they'll mark features as good ideas and eventually as features that are coming in the next release. So let me start with some email enhancements. The first feature I will be talking about today is how you can get some personalized email alerts that are sent from your workflow. And what this basically is the ability to change who the from email address is in alerts that are sent from your workflow. What you would see is basically on the bottom of your email alert, there's a new drop-down that lets you to specify the from email address, either being the default workflow user or the current user email. Where that default user is set up is in your workflow settings. You would actually have the default workflow user set, and that's where that comes from. The other feature with email is that you can preview emails before sending them. So let me go back into look at just a very simple email template. I'll use one that comes with sample.org for contact follow-up. And you see a button for send, test, and verify merge fields. You can select your contact. For example, I'll use John Smith and select a sample account. And then you select who that email is going to be sent to. So that's a very nice feature for being able to preview emails before they're actually sent. And then the other additional email feature is that when you're using email templates within code, you can actually have an attribute called language, you see here on the bottom right, where you can specify the language that this email template is going to be used for. This is very useful to developers as it allows you to have one template to send emails in any language. The next feature I'd like to talk about is really ties with making your app secure, and the fact that when you create custom objects, your permissions will now default to off. So let me show you real quick what I mean by this. I'm going to go into create a very simple custom object, and I'll just say an expenses object. And you see here it tells me an alert that tells me that permissions for this object for all other profiles will be defaulted to off. So with that new object created, let me go down to my profiles. And I'll look at just a standard platform user, for example. When I scroll down to the permissions section, I'll zoom in a little bit here. You see that my expenses object that I just created doesn't have any permissions for read access, for example. So why that's important to you is that as a developer, you want to be creating objects, and you don't want to have people having access to your different profiles. You might have ambiguities between different orgs when you have a package that you're deploying out to other users, and you don't want any ambiguities between the profile permissions to affect these applications. So that is that feature. Now I'd like to segue into talking about a really exciting thing coming with the database features, is that with Spring 10, we introduced the ability to do sophisticated data modeling. And basically what this boils down to is that you can easily create multi-level master detail relationships. So in the past, if you had a parent with a child and another child relationship to that, and you wanted to aggregate data up to the highest level, you couldn't do that using roll-up summary fields or formula fields. I'll use a very simple example of that charity application that I was discussing, where we have, for example, a charity at the highest level that has a one-to-many relationship with events. So if I have a charity called the Foundation, and I have a few events like a 5K walk or an education drive, and then those events have a one-to-many relationship down to donations that are collected, and those donations come from different people. With roll-up summary fields, I can aggregate, a sum of the donations for a certain event up to the event level, but it used to be hard to take that one level up higher to do calculations and put it up to the charity level. So let me show you how we can do that now in Spring 10. Scrolling back up. Let me walk you through quickly this application. So you see I've got my charities, and I'll click into the Foundation charity. And you see this has a master detail relationship to events. So I have 2 events related to that charity. And then if I click down on the 5K walk, you see that I have 2 donations that have already been made, and I have a roll-up summary that says that the total donations was 85. It counts them. Number 2 does the math calculation of an average with a formula. Pretty simple. But now, how do I get that information to sum up on this highest level using my multi-level master detail relationships? So I'm going to do that for you right now. I'll go into setups, and I'll go into my objects. I will go into my charity object, and I'm going to create a new field, a roll-up summary field, and I'll call this total donations. And you see I can select events. I'll sum up my total donations. Go through the regular steps of making it visible to everybody and adding it to my page layout. And now let me return to my charities. I'll look at my foundation, and you'll see right now this is actually calculating. So right when you add it, there might be some calculations that are happening. Let me go into my 5K walk and add a donation now. So you see I've got $85 total donated right now. So let me add Dave Carroll, before he talks about Apex and Visualforce, wants to make a $100 donation. He's very generous today. So you see now what went from a total of 85 has now gone up to 185. But the exciting part is that when I click up to my foundation, you see now that total number has been calculated and aggregated up. And I can do that same, go through those same steps for totals, averages, calculations, and you used to not be able to do that. And that's a very exciting feature. One point I want to make before I hand this over to Dave is that this will go down 3 levels in master detail relationships. So now I get to hand it over to Dave to get all geeky with you.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, thanks everybody for coming to the webinar. The spring release is really a very interesting release for those of us who like to walk around with propellers on our hats and write code. And I believe that once you see some of the features, you'll agree with me on that. The first place I want to start, though, is with some API features that we've added in the spring release around calendar functions. Now, this might seem like, at first, kind of a small thing, but what it does is it allows you to simplify your SOCL to be able to create or allow the database to do a lot of processing that otherwise you might have to do inside of Apex code, for instance. And so you can see that we've got, about 14, 12 new functions here. And the way that you use these is you put it in your SOCL statement like the one you see down below, and you can use any date field as a parameter for that function. So in the case of the SOCL down below, we're getting the name of all the opportunities that have a close date within a calendar month corresponding to the second month, which would be February. So we have fiscal month, day in the month. All these things really simplify the ability for you to create very readable and manageable SOCL statements. Because of this feature is so cool, I decided to give it a small happy face with a thumbs up. The next feature, though, has a little larger happy face with a thumbs up. And this is, I think, a really powerful way to make SOCL more expressive, and that is by introducing group by clauses and having clauses. Now, this is a great new feature for the Force.com platform. If you've used any SQL, standard SQL before, then you should be familiar with what these 2 clauses do. So the group by clause allows you to begin to, as Sarah did in the database, roll up some values and group them together. The way this works is we include an aggregate function, in this case count, and then we'll go ahead and leverage our calendar date on here, select it from opportunity, and then group it by month. And what this will do is it will show us the number of opportunities that we have corresponding to each month of the year. So instead of having to kind of define that yourself in code in a procedural way, we can do it in this much more declarative way, letting the database do the work, and thereby reducing the number of SQL or script statements that we would have to execute in our Apex code. And I think what you'll see with the API and Apex features in the spring release is that we've done a lot of things to really kind of minimize or provide you the ability to optimize your Apex code, thereby allowing you to write more sophisticated apps. So along with group by comes the having clause, and this is a way to be able to use the group by or the aggregate function as a filter. So the second statement there is the same as the first. The only difference is that we're limiting the number or the months that we want to include in our aggregate to those that are less than 8, which corresponds to, I believe, August by the calendar. So again, this is a great way to begin kind of doing your own kind of analytics and reporting and providing a higher level of access to the data. Now, the big thumbs up, the big smiley face, are the additions we made to our aggregate function collection. So prior to the spring release, we had one aggregate function, count, and now we've added 5 more: average, count distinct, min, max, and sum. And so we can see that in a single statement now, we can count, average, sum up, and group by a calendar month for a particular query. So this is really allowing us to reduce the amount of kind of post-processing that we would normally do in Apex code with a weaker SOCL statement. I'm sure that all of you Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't wait for the applause to die down, is what I'm told. So I'm sure all of you will agree with me that this is a hugely powerful addition to the language. Now, of course, we've got a new addition to the language, and this addition will cause us to have to kind of respond to our SOCL queries a little bit differently. So typically, a SOCL query is going to return either a concrete object from the database or a list of objects from the database. And because we're aggregating or rolling these up, we don't actually have that particular data model to cast the results into. And so what we're doing is introducing a new type in Apex code as well as in the API called aggregate result. And basically, the aggregate result you can consider as like a map. It's going to contain key value pairs corresponding to the items that you have in the select clause in your SOCL statement. So for instance, in the Apex code example on your screen, we're simply counting up the statuses of all our leads and grouping them by the status so that we can see how they bucket out. And the way that we handle that result is we iterate through the aggregate results and use a getter to get the status and also a getter to get the total. One thing that I want to point out is that these values are objects. So if you need to use the primitive data type that they represent, you'll be casting those into those types or using value of for the primitive that they match with. So basically the same thing with the Web Services API. The structure is very much the same. In this case, we're going through our array of get records. Get records typically, as I mentioned, will have an array of S objects that correspond to a type. In this case, these S objects are aggregate results. So the key thing in that statement is that the aggregate result is an S object as well. So in this case, we get to the values by using an indexer. So you can see they're highlighted in bold. ar.getAny 0 corresponds to the first item in my select statement, and getAny sub 1 corresponds to the second item. So very, very easy to use, very powerful, and definitely a necessity with the new aggregate functions. So in the context or along the theme of making SOCL more expressive, what we've done is we've also added to our semi-join and anti-join syntax. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but we introduced semi-joins and anti-joins in our last release. And what we've done in this release is allowed for child-to-child semi and anti-joins. So for instance, you might be presented with the challenge of selecting all the opportunities that are associated with accounts that might have contacts modified by some guy named Jim. So how would you do that in the old syntax? Well, you would probably have to do a couple of queries, iterate through them, chew up a lot of script statements. With semi-joins, child-to-child semi-joins, you can do it in this single statement. And so the thing that is really key here is that we're allowing this sub-select in the value definition of our in clause. And to do an anti-join is simply adding a not before the in. So instead of everything being in that group, we select everything that's not in that group. So again, the overriding theme here is trying to provide more power into system-level functionality so that you don't have to roll your own in Apex code. Okay, so this is another one that's really near and dear to my heart. Raise your hand if you've ever done callouts and had to parse XML. I see that most of you are raising your hands. And to do this, we used to use this Apex class written by Ron Hess. I'm sure most of you know Ron, called XML DOM, which was great because it allowed us to be able to parse these things in a very nice and easy way. The problem is that if you go to include that solution in a package or to promote it to production, you've got to write all the test code for that XML DOM class. Not only that, processing XML is a pretty iterative, intense type of operation. In other words, you're going to chew up a lot of script statements. It's going to use a lot more memory than probably you want to for such a utility. And so we're introducing two new classes that are related to each other, the XML document and XML node. These are in the DOM namespace, so dom.document is the object. And this allows you to process XML that you receive from a callout. It also allows you to easily create XML documents. It supports full access to parent-child navigation up and down the tree. Namespace support is built in, as well as robust attribute support. So the good news is that you can now remove that XML DOM class. You don't have to write any more test cases to cover this utility, and your performance is going to be much higher. So I thought I'd do a little performance comparison. Apex code, the XML DOM the old way. This is how you might load the old XML DOM object, parse from string, passing in a string of XML. And you can see in my little table, which is, I didn't do a lot of research, and this is, I think, representative nonetheless. In the old method, it took us 385 milliseconds to execute this. And I'll be showing you the actual XML code that we executed just so you get an idea. 385 milliseconds in internet time is a pretty long time, so it'd be nice if we could do better. We also executed 3,800 script statements. So these are script statements that we're essentially paying for through our account of limits that we have available in an execution context. And then we've used 31,000 units of memory on the heap. Now, if you compare this to the new method, it's still 2 lines of code. We create the dom.document object and then execute the load on it. And what we've done is we've taken that Model T that would get us from point A to B very reliably and turned it into a high-performance sports car. The execution time went from 385 milliseconds to 66. The number of script statements is reduced to 5 from 3,800, and we're not using any of the Apex code allocated memory. And so what I'd like to do is do a little demo for you of this in action. So the way that I'll do that is invoke our new system log, which I'll explain more about in a moment, and just go ahead and type old DOM. Let me show you what this is. I've created a class, a couple of static methods, old DOM and new DOM, and they're basically just executing that code that I showed you on that previous slide. Here's the XML string that I'm parsing. This is actually a Facebook detailed friend response. So it's not huge. It's a couple hundred lines of XML. So let's go ahead and execute that. And the first thing we'll see is that the old DOM, in this case, it went a bit faster, 252 milliseconds. And if we take a look at the log now, we'll be able to see that it did 3873 script statements, and the heap size is up to 31K. So we'll compare that now with the new DOM. So let me edit my statement to execute and execute it. Okay, 71 milliseconds, that's significantly better. Click on the new log and we'll check out the usage, 4 script statements, and no heap. So this is going to result in a very, very much more performant application that uses XML. So moving on to another feature with relationship to Apex Code is the code scheduler. We introduced the code scheduler as a preview in the previous release. It is now generally available. So for those of you who are not familiar with the code scheduler, this allows you to arbitrarily schedule code to run at times that you determine. The granularity for this scheduler is a 24-hour period, but you can schedule it weekly, you can schedule it 3 times a week, you can schedule it 4 times one time, you can put a stop date, a start date, full control over when this code runs. And the only thing that you have to do once you've figured out a schedule that you need to run is write your Apex code to run it, And to do that, we use a global class that implements the schedulable interface and also implements the execute method of that interface. And so what happens is when the scheduler ticks over at a time that it's supposed to run your bit of code, it will go look up your class and find that execute method and call it, and your code will run. So again, generally available in Spring 10, something that a lot of people have been asking for. It's not quite cron, but I think it's just as good. So now I have a little bit of commentary on Apex execution and debugging that we've added to Spring 10. Not all of these are earth-shattering, but they're all very useful. So we now have line numbers available in our web editor. This is very useful when you get an error statement saying that something on line 1374 is a problem. Now you can scroll down and find that easily in the web editor rather than counting. Generic collections. So collections previously must have been of a concrete type, count, lead, or SObject, or a primitive, and now they can be generic. This enables you to write a function that can take collections of different types and be able to manage them properly. Related to that is the fact that SObjects now derive from objects. Again, so now you can be able to write a much more object-oriented type of code that might accept an object. You can determine the type once the method starts to execute because now SObjects, as well as all your other objects, derive from objects. IDE upgrades. One very important upgrade that is exciting for me is the fact that we now support Eclipse 3.4 Galileo. So I know a lot of questions on the boards came about when Galileo was introduced, and we tend to trend behind that just a little bit, but we're supporting it now. And as with every release, there's additional metadata support supported by the IDE, which increases the number of things that we can manage through the IDE. Now, the really big thing here is the no limit on collection size. Previously to Spring 10 release, we had a limit of 1,000 items that could be in a collection. That limit is removed entirely. It's not raised. It's completely removed. And the only thing that will limit your collection size now is the heap size. So bravo. Good job, R&D. Logging and debugging. We've completely redone the logger as you noticed, and I'm just going to switch over to it and explain all the new features of it. So this is the new system log. We get to the system log by clicking system log in the UI. And what we've got now are sort of the same functionality, but a lot more usefulness in it. So first thing I want to do is show you the filter settings. This is really huge. I don't know about you, but I sometimes had a hard time understanding what the different levels would log and what they wouldn't log. And now we can see exactly the kind of events that are going to be logged based on the level we choose. For instance, if I change database to finest, we'll see that a couple of more items have been indicated that will be logged. Workflow, likewise, if I click none, none show up. Apex code has several levels. So we go to fine, and a new list of things show up, or we go to error, and we see that only a few things show up. So this gives us a lot more insight, understanding, and control over the items that we log in our code. Also, we've got the execute Apex box. This was in the previous log. But what's great about this particular box is if I can type this in real quick, we'll do XML or do new DOM. I'm just going to execute that DOM function. And rather than see the logs scroll up into the screen, what we've got now is a list of logs during this session. So if I execute that again and again and again, we'll see that I got several histories of my log, and clicking on each one will allow me to navigate back and forth between them. This is a real useful feature. If you've got a log, you go in and change something, you go back and execute, and you kind of want to compare the differences in the logs. So this is big. In addition to the ability to have the list of logs and navigate between them, we've also formatted the logs. So if you'll notice in the actual trace area down here, these fields are separated by pipe characters. And I'm sure that some enterprising person will be able to figure out how to actually obtain this log, or maybe it will be obtainable in a future version so that you can cut and paste this thing into Excel or any other kind of parsing tool to better understand, filter your log that way. So really good stuff going on with logging and debugging. And now I'm going to take a deep breath. So hopefully you guys are as excited as I am about those features. I think that what we're seeing is just another iterative step in the evolution of the platform. We're not going to be slowing down this innovation anytime soon, so stay tuned. Talk about the user interface a little bit. We've got the new skin. Some of you guys were at Dreamforce, hopefully, and heard me talk about the new interface. There's a couple of things that I want to point out. If you are an ISV or have an application that that you've built that maybe tries to imitate our user interface or depends on CSS calculations, please go visit developerforce.com where we have more information about intricate details about the new UI. What I want to point out, though, is that it's fully CSS-driven. This is in contrast to our previous UI, and so we're much more standards compliant. This is a good thing for everyone. Opt-in or opt-out. This is, as with all of our new features, we always give the customer the ability to opt in and opt out. What that means to you is that if you need to detect which skin is running to determine how to render your app, we've created some new functions on the user object in Visualforce to do that. The skin applies to Visualforce with components without any special thought. So Visualforce components inherit the Salesforce.com look and feel, and that's the case with the new skin as well. It's an org level permission, so all customers in a single org, all users in a single org will have the same setting whether they're using it or not. It's not customizable. So although it's CSS, we have not decided to publish an API around our CSS. I don't know if we ever will, but if you were to go in and kind of assume that that is an API, then you would be making a bad assumption, and we can't guarantee that things won't change. The other really important thing to understand is this will not affect page behavior of existing pages. This is purely look and feel. So have the confidence that the behavior of your page will not change. What you do want to pay attention to, though, is the look and feel of your page. Along the lines of user interface, I've got some great news from a technology perspective, maybe not so great for those of you who have implemented S-controls, but we are moving forward on S-control deprecation. We announced this a couple years ago at Dreamforce in the State of the Union. And what this means is that you will not, after the Spring 10 release, be able to create new S-controls. Existing S-controls can still be run and still be edited. So if you've got a solution built using S-controls, don't worry, we haven't completely killed them. We're just deprecating them. S-controls that are in unmanaged packages created before January 1st, 2010 will still be installable. So if you've created a package and haven't had a chance yet to replace your S-controls with Visualforce, no worries, you can still install those as long as they were created before the new year. And Visualforce is the technology that replaces S-controls. So anything you can do in an S-control, you can do in Visualforce, and probably more in Visualforce. So there's a lot more details around this than I have time to go into here. And so a quick tip for you is to go to developer.force.com, and in the upper search box on the right-hand side, just type in S-control deprecation. The first The first hit that comes up on that has a lot of additional details for you. So that's where to go to find out the nitty-gritty. Oh, this is a really huge feature, packaged custom UI. And what we're talking about here is the ability to package action overrides and custom buttons. Previously, this was not available. I think that one of the best ways to add functionality to customize Salesforce and objects on an existing layout is by using these action overrides. I do want to note that this is in pilot for this release, but you can, what? Oh, right. Sorry, I was getting direction from my director. We have producers and directors in here. It's a really big deal. Anyways, so yeah, it's in pilot, and I encourage you to check it out. Those wonderful workarounds that you had to do before are no longer necessary to get around this limitation that is no longer there. With that, what I'd like to do is invite Sarah back to join the conversation. Sarah?
Thank you, Dave. Join the conversation. I wonder where you got that. Wow, it really sounds like developers, there's a lot of features that came with Apex and Visualforce that's going to make your lives a lot easier, less code, faster, better performance, good stuff. Now I'm going to talk about how I can make it easier to internationalize your apps with the new translation workbench, and this makes it so you can translate your apps with a lot of speed and ease. This is best shown with a demonstration. I'm going to come back over to my application. And the first thing actually I want to do is show you, I'm going to log in to my app as a Spanish user. I have somebody that's here just Spanish. And I'm going to show you that if I look on the account, on this account, see here, I've added a custom field for credit rating, and it's not translated yet and just has listings of cold and hot. So let me go back to my setup. And you see if you scroll down in the administration setup area, there's something new called the translation workbench. I can manage my languages and add translators to each language. So for example, say I wanted to add Japanese support to my org, and if I happen to be qualified to translate in Japanese, which I unfortunately am not, but if I did that, I would then have permissions to perform translations in Japanese. In the translation workbench, what you have is the ability to, what happens is you'll see here the thing I was going to demo was you can click on the filter for the language, and you would see all the languages that you had added, which in the case I had English, Spanish, and Japanese. If I selected Spanish, then I could see that I can filter on the criteria, and I can select pick lists that I want to filter and per object, in that case the account. And when I did that, I could see a credit rating show up, just similarly how you see the ownership here. And you just click on the value and type it in and save. And then when you return, you'll see that your translations are done for you. So it's a very easy way to translate your applications. The next thing I want to show you is this is something that's really exciting, and I wish I had those smiley faces I could have added here. I think people are going to love this. The rich text support really makes your apps look good. Let me show you this firsthand. I have a very simple object I've created called a phone, and I just have basic fields here for price and name. But what I want to add is a description that's a rich text. So let me come into my objects, and I'll customize that phone object by adding a custom field. And if you scroll down, you'll see what's new is the ability to choose rich text area. And I do want to point out that this is a beta feature in Spring 10. I'm going to call it description and proceed through the same normal steps to make it visible and add it to my page layout. That's all I have to do. Now when I come to my phones, I'll click on my iPhone 3GS. And I need to click Edit. I can't just double click, I'll click Edit. And what you see here is a beautiful menu bar that allows me to add in rich text. So I'll put in some text and say I want to bold the price. I can do that with shortcut keys, or I can also underline by using the menu. Let me make these a bulleted list by clicking bullets, and then say I want to make this apple a hyperlink. Just click the link, type in the URL, and done. But so I have here one more thing I want to show you. I want to actually add an image right here. I can add an image that comes from the files on my desktop or from a URL. I will simply select a picture that I've got on my desktop of a phone. Looks good. I can also scroll down, just click it, and just resize inline. Looks good. Ready to save. Done. You see here now I've got a beautiful looking rich text, my bolds there, bullets, everything, and my hyperlinks work perfectly. So
Wow,
that's a very, yeah, this one's really cool. Okay, the next feature I want to show is another pilot feature, and this is the ability to personalize your Salesforce URL using my domain. This is best explained by saying you work for a company called Acme, and you want to have the URL of acme.salesforce.com. When you participate in the pilot, under the administration area for your company profile, you'll see a menu item for my domain, and you would go through the same process as choosing a domain as you would for in registering a site, for example, where you check the availability and register it. There is a process of getting users migrated over to your new domain, so you want to have some procedures set in place to get everybody going to the right URL. But that's a high-level look at my domain, which is coming in Spring 10. And then a quick update on sites. We've introduced the ability to have something called authenticated sites. I want to clarify that and don't want you to think that you couldn't have authentication to your sites right now. What this is, it allows you to have a new license type that's supported to scale to large quantities of users. So you can scale your websites out to millions of users that might not be people that are actually accessing your back-end application. They're just going to be website users. And what this gives you is the ability to have the security management, profile management, all those tools that you have for your current users within the app for your website users. So that's a lot less code that you have to do to create any user management for your site. So this is very exciting, especially if you're developing e-commerce sites where you want to be able to track information, have people actually log in to their site. So this is a high-level slide which discusses the feature enablement. We mentioned a few things such as my domain being pilot, rich text support being beta. This presentation is going to be made available to you, so don't worry about having to write these down. You can find all this information on developer.force.com/releases. And I already preempted myself by saying this is the website you want to go to find out information. There's also the same information on the community website, which has information for the apps as well. You'll find demos, the webinar recorded, documentation, and the last bullet point I want to point out here is discussion. Many of you are already used to using the discussion boards, but I want to point out that by using the tag of Spring 10 on the discussion boards, it's really the best way to get your questions answered and make it really scalable so other people can see those questions and answers in the threads as well, and you can provide feedback. So go to the discussion boards to get quick answers on Spring 10. And that being said, yeah, I want to stay on this slide. I got ahead of myself. What we want to do now is open this up to question and answer period. We've been monitoring your questions. We've got a lot of them, but make sure to continue to add them on the sidebar as if you have them as we go through.
Yeah, any questions that we don't answer that you guys submit, we will answer over the next couple of days and publish them up on the site as well. So I wanted to start off with first question about the custom object permissions. The question is, with the changes in default security, will custom object permissions in previous releases, I assume that means objects created prior to Spring 10, also have the default to off? And the answer to that is no. We are very sure about not modifying anything that you've got inside your org configuration-wise from release to release, so this is strictly new objects created going forward. Here's one for Sarah. Can you roll up across object formula results?
Yeah, that's one of the exciting things is you can. You saw on the demo I had a few calculations there for that did an average. So if I wanted to do calculation on that at the highest level, I could. So that's really exciting.
Hey, that's very cool. Let's see. We've got a question about sophisticated modeling. If I delete a record at the charity level, i.e. at the highest level, will it delete the children? The answer to that question is yes, and that's one of the identifying characteristics of a master detail relationship is that the cascading deletes is honored in part of that functionality. Let's see. The next question is: does multi-level create related lists, or is it restricted to roll-ups only? Sarah?
It's not restricted to roll-ups, and the related list is really more part of the master detail relationship. So when you create a master detail relationship and you create it on the child, you then have the ability to have that show up as the related list on the master. So there's two fields that we're really talking about here. One is setting up the multi-level, just the master detail relationship, and the other, which is roll-ups, which can be used on the master to perform calculations.
Great.
And that does go 3 levels down, so you can have, in essence, that means 3 childs down, so it would be 4 objects.
Yeah, and the diagram we saw was a 2-level.
Yeah, I tried to keep it simple to explain, but you could go one more level down. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great.
And the one thing I wanted to add, too, is the reports. The reporting is automatically done for you, so I didn't demo that, but if you could then go to your reporting and create a new report type or custom report, you would see that was, charity with events with donations would be available to you.
Nice. The question is, can we use the new SOCL functions like month and year and so on in workflow/formula fields? And the answer to that is no. These are SOCL features. There's a second part of this question which says, if not, is that under consideration for a future release? And I don't have an answer for that, yes or no. I would reckon with the progress of the application and the platform that we may see that someday, but I've not seen any indication. Okay, so can a class implement both schedulable and batchable? And this is in relationship to the code scheduler. A class can only implement a single interface. It can extend other classes, but can only implement a single interface. Question is, can we insert, update, or upsert more than 1,000 records? And this is not a limit that has been changed in Spring Release. So the answer to that is yes, if you're using the appropriate batch, Apex, or other technology, but not with a single API call.